My wife got a tattoo 3 inches below her navel. GML. What a coincidence. Her ex-boyfriend's name is L, and he happens to be a tattoo master. She thought I loved her, so I wouldn't mind. But why did she cry herself blind after the divorce? Mary didn't come home all night and went straight to the bathroom when she returned. I knew she had gone to see L again. Sitting on the sofa, the divorce agreement lay before me. Mary was drying her hair after a shower. I pointed and said, "Sign it. We're getting divorced." Mary froze, the towel slipping off, the glaring tattoo stinging my eyes. GML. At first she looked surprised, then said dismissively, "Putting on airs. What kind of trick are you playing?" Seeing my silence, her tone softened somewhat. Then she spoke in a businesslike manner. "If you're upset because I didn't come home last night, I apologize. L had an episode, and I want to take care of him." I pointed at her tattoo and mocked. He had an episode, and yet the technique is still this good? Truly a master tattoo artist. Mary froze, then looked embarrassed, before putting on a nonchalant expression and sneering coldly. "Jealous? What do you know? This is art. Only those with dirty minds think dirty thoughts." Then, she slammed the door shut and ignored the divorce papers completely. She probably thought I was jealous, but I wasn't. This time I wasn't joking. I'm really getting a divorce. No expectations, so I'm at peace. Almost everyone in the circle knows I'm Mary's simp. Back then, when her family's company, White Group, was in financial trouble, I sold my assets to fill the gap for her. To secure a bank loan, I drank until I vomited blood with the bank manager. When her mother fell ill, I donated a kidney, and the wound still aches faintly. I proposed 99 times before Mary finally agreed to marry me. But in these 3 years of marriage, she has never let me touch her. Mary said she has androphobia. She's allergic to men's touch, which could be life-threatening. Now it seems Mary doesn't have androphobia. She's just afraid of me. She simply doesn't want me to touch her. L sent me a video of the entire process of him tattooing Mary. He handled it with great care, as if polishing his most treasured possession. Mary's face was gentle, her eyes glowing with happiness. I turned off my phone, feeling somewhat nauseated. After packing a few simple clothes, Mary suddenly emerged from the room, frowning as she asked, "You're serious?" I nodded and turned to leave when she suddenly became flustered. "What about the assets? How do we account for the shares you injected?" I smiled. "It's clearly written in the divorce agreement. I'm leaving with nothing. I don't want the money, I don't want the kidney, and I don't want you anymore." Mary's eyes widened, her lips trembling uncontrollably. After saying good twice in a row, she immediately called L. "Come keep me company tonight. Let's celebrate my happy divorce." She hung up the phone, looking somewhat smug, but I remained unmoved, even feeling a sense of relief. I handed her the divorce papers and said calmly, "Sign it. Happy divorce to you." Mary paused for a moment, then suddenly picked up the pen and hastily signed her name. "Get out." I nodded, glanced at the furnishings in the room, and said with emotion, "Remember to have the maid clean up the remaining things. I won't take everything with me. Farewell." I slammed the door and left directly. When did I start falling out of love? Probably the day I donated a kidney. I donated a kidney to my mother-in-law and ran a fever of 40 degrees Celsius myself. But Mary left both me and my mother-in-law alone in the hospital room. She said she had urgent matters to attend to. But in L's social media feed, I saw a photo. It was a photo of interlocked fingers. Mary had taken off her ring, but I could recognize her hand. L also captioned, "When both parties strive towards each other, love is never far away." After reading L's social media post, my heart trembled. Despite spending 10 years by Mary's side and pouring so much effort into our relationship, it still couldn't compare to the white moonlight in her heart. The moment childhood sweethearts reunited, I was forgotten in an instant. After waking up, my mother-in-law didn't see Mary and frowned, asking, "Where has she gone during such an important surgery?" At that time, to cover for Mary, I weakly said, "Mom, she's very busy with work. Let's try to understand." For For the following week, Mary didn't return, but I could see her in Grimmerell's social media posts every day. My mother-in-law kept sighing, as if she had guessed something. She also held my hand and kept apologizing. "George, Mary must be busy. Don't blame her. You're the only one Mom approves of." I gave a bitter smile. Then Mary, who had been missing for a week, appeared, bringing Grimmerell with her. They were a perfect match. Handsome man and beautiful woman, looking exceptionally well together. Meanwhile, I had lost a kidney and was utterly weak, emaciated like a stray dog. Mother-in-law was furious when she saw Grimmerell. "Mary, why did you bring him here? Do you want me to die sooner?" Mary quickly said, "Mom, don't be angry. Grimmerell came back this time because he heard about your surgery and wanted to see you." Grimmerell's long hair swayed as waves of melancholy rippled across his face. He spoke despondently. "Auntie, after all these years, you still haven't forgiven me?" I knew about their past history. They were childhood sweethearts, innocent playmates who had been each other's first love. But later, it was suspected that the Grimmerell family set a trap, causing the White family to hit rock bottom. Mary's father jumped to his death. The White family and the Grimmerell family became mortal enemies. My mother-in-law also directly forced the two to break up, and I helped the White family during their most difficult time. My mother-in-law acknowledged me. Grimmerell thought I was a thief, and Mary believed I was taking advantage of their misfortune. They hated me to the core. At this very moment, my mother-in-law stared at Grimmerell and said, "Mary's father was killed by your family. No matter how much affection you have for each other, I will never approve of this. And I have only one son-in-law, George. Unless I die, you two will never be together." Mary's expression changed, and she frowned at me, demanding, "Did you say bad things about Grimmerell to my mom? You despicable coward." Grimmerell also turned to me and said, "George, we've known each other for many years. I know you're resentful, but you can't slander me or falsely accuse Mary and me. We're completely innocent, nothing like what you're imagining." Faced with their aggressive stance, my wound throbbed faintly, and I was left speechless. In the end, my mother-in-law drove them away and then anxiously said to me, "George, I'd rather die than let Mary be with her father's murderer." At that moment, I was filled with resentment, but utterly powerless. Late at night, Mary called me, still accusing me of speaking ill of Grimmerell. I was too weak to respond and remained silent for a long time. But the voice on the other end of the phone was Grimmerell's. "Are you done undressing? Mary, hurry up and come here." Mary froze, and I could hear her heavy breathing. After a long pause, she finally explained nonchalantly, "Don't overthink it. Grimmerell's puppy needs a bath." Then she hurriedly hung up the phone. I lay in the hospital for a month, but never saw her. After being discharged, I took good care of my mother-in-law, then watched Grimmerell flaunt his love with Mary on social media. That day, the company held a shareholders meeting, and I dragged my sick body to attend the banquet. But when it came to the cocktail party, I saw Mary in her evening gown introducing Grimmerell to her girlfriends. They made a perfect match. He was handsome. She was beautiful. Standing there, watching Mary and Grimmerell's intimate demeanor, my heart felt as if it were being tightly gripped by an invisible hand, the pain so intense I could barely breathe. Mary was chatting with her girlfriends at that moment. "You really dare to take that bet back then, Mary?" One of her girlfriends said with a laugh. "Why wouldn't I dare? I bet he wouldn't propose 100 times. Who knew he'd actually be foolish enough to propose so many times?" Mary's voice was full of sarcasm. "Yet you ended up marrying him anyway." Another close friend said, "That was unavoidable. You play, you pay. So what if I married him? Would he dare lay a finger on me?" Mary sneered coldly. I stood in the corner, listening to their conversation, feeling my heart bleed. So, in her heart, I was just a tool for a bet, and she married me only because of a wager. My heartache surged like a tide. My girlfriends continued mocking me. George still thinks he married a beautiful bride, but in reality, he's just a joke. Nothing more than a stand-in for Grimmerell. Yet he gave so much for Mary, even donated a kidney to her mom, and in the end, he got nothing. Haha, how hilarious. Mary listened to her friend's words without any rebuttal, just wearing a meaningful expression. Suddenly, she seemed to sense something and turn around to see me. She pursed her lips, appearing somewhat embarrassed. Mary's indifference, Grimmerell's smugness, and the viciousness of her girlfriends were like sharp blades, relentlessly stabbing my already battered heart. Mary slightly raised her chin, her eyes evasive, and said, "What are you doing here? Feeling better now?" Her girlfriends gathered around, their faces adorned with mocking smiles. "Oh, isn't this that Sim George? What, still not giving up? Haha, take a look at yourself. How could you ever compare to Grammarell?" They exchanged words back and forth, each sentence like a thorn, deeply piercing my heart. Grammarell wrapped his arm around Mary's waist, the corners of his lips curling slightly into a smug smile. "George, you'd better wise up. The one who isn't loved is the third wheel." Just then, Mr. Wilson, a major shareholder of the company, walked over. He glanced at me, then at Mary and Grammarell, slightly furrowing his brow. "Mary, how could you bring this outsider to the company's cocktail party?" Mary quickly explained, "Mr. Lewis, Grammarell isn't an outsider. He's the successor of Grammarell Group, my friend, and a very talented artist." Mr. Lewis shook his head. "Mary, don't forget that you're now the head of the company. Your every move represents the company's image. Bringing a competitor to the cocktail party, what will the other shareholders think? And with George there too, if the media catches it, it could affect the company." Mary's expression darkened. Mr. Lewis patted me on the shoulder and said, "All our shareholders approve of George. If any issues arise in your relationship, I can withdraw my investment at any time." Mr. Lewis turned his gaze toward me, his eyes carrying a hint of sympathy. By then, I had already lost all hope, but still asked Grimmerell with a glimmer of expectation, "Grimmerell, what kind of dog do you have at home?" Grimmerell froze for a moment, then shrugged nonchalantly and said, "I don't keep dogs. I'm allergic to pets." Mary's eyes widened, and her mouth opened slightly as if she couldn't find any words to say. Grimmerell smiled and said, "Are you talking about that phone call? Don't get the wrong idea. I was just going to give her a tattoo, nothing else." Trembling with rage, I grabbed Grimmerell by the collar. "You bitch, you pair of bitches." Grimmerell forcefully broke free from my grip and shoved me away. "Stop acting crazy here. Mary doesn't love you at all. You have no right to interfere with our affairs." I lost my senses and lunged at Grimmerell again. We wrestled with each other as the surrounding crowd gathered, yet no one stepped forward to intervene. Mary screamed from the side, "George, have you gone mad? Let go of Grimmerell." Suddenly, Grimmerell pretended to be pushed by me, and his head hit the nearby table, causing blood to instantly flow down. Seeing this, Mary rushed over furiously and slapped me hard. "George, you've gone too far. Apologize to Grimmerell right now." I froze, staring at Mary's furious gaze, feeling utterly hopeless inside. Mary turned to the security guards and shouted, "Get him out of here." The guards immediately stepped forward and lifted me up. I struggled, but my wound split open at that moment, the intense pain nearly making me pass out. Mary looked at me without a trace of pity. "Take him to the hospital. Don't let it be an eyesore here." The security guards dragged me out of the banquet hall, and I passed out on the way to the hospital. I lay in the hospital ward, my physical weakness and inner anguish plunging me into a dazed state. In my haze, I seemed to hear Mary's voice. Grimmerell was beaten by George and diagnosed with nephritis. He needs a kidney transplant, and it just so happens that George's is a match. Mary's words pierced my heart like a cold blade in an instant. My mother-in-law's voice followed immediately, filled with panic and anger. "George only has one kidney left. If he donates it to Grimmerell, George will die." Mary remained silent for a long time, and that brief, quiet felt as endless as a century. Finally, her voice came again, but it left my heart cold as ashes. "For Grimmerell, let him make this one sacrifice." My mother-in-law grew even more agitated. "No, absolutely not. Mary, you can't be so cruel. George has given so much for our family. How would you treat him like this? I'd rather die than let you do this. I lay on the hospital bed, my consciousness hazy, yet these words pierced through my ears with unmistakable clarity. My heart turned utterly cold. So, in Mary's heart, Grimmerell would always be the most important, while I was merely a tool to be sacrificed at will. Grimmerell's voice came through. Auntie, since George loves Mary, and Mary loves me, what's the harm in him donating a kidney to me? After all, he's just a useless waste. The mother-in-law continued to threaten with death. If you dare let George donate a kidney to Grimmerell, I'll die right here in front of you. I'll even call the police to stop you. Under the mother-in-law's fierce opposition, Mary seemed temporarily at a loss. The hospital room fell into a deathly silence, with only my heart sinking to the depths. Struggling in pain and despair, only one thought remained in my mind: divorce. I can no longer have any connection with this woman. Her indifference and cruelty have left me deeply wounded. In the days that followed, they continued to flaunt their affection, while I was already preparing for divorce. On the day Mary finished her tattoo, I mustered my weakened strength and presented the divorce papers I had prepared long ago. Mary panicked, furious, and anxious. She kicked me out of the house. However, the next day, when I arrived at the Civil Affairs Bureau, full of anticipation, Mary stood me up. I frantically called her, only to hear her cold voice on the other end. No time, no divorce. I was stunned, filled with confusion and anger. She clearly doesn't love me, clearly wants to destroy me, so why won't she agree to divorce? Dragging my exhausted body, I arrived at her office. Mary stood by the window, seemingly preoccupied. Seeing me arrive, Mary frowned and said coldly, "What are you doing here?" I said no divorce. I angrily asked why. If you don't love me, why won't you agree to a divorce? What exactly do you want? Is it because Mr. Lewis is withdrawing his investment? Don't worry, I'll make it clear to him. When it comes to emotions, interests are what matter most. You don't need to worry about that. Mary remained silent for a moment, then said, "It's not because of that. I have my reasons, but I haven't done anything to betray you, so I won't divorce." Frowning, I said, "I'm sorry, whether you betrayed our marriage or not, I want a divorce. I don't love you anymore. Do you understand? Since you don't agree, then we'll see each other in court. I have evidence." I took out the photos Grimmerell posted on social media, and then showed the video Grimmerell sent me. The footage of him meticulously tattooing Mary. Mary turned pale, muttering to herself, "How dare he take pictures? What a disgraceful man." I said directly, "Mary, if you don't file for divorce, then this evidence will appear in court. Let's see who ends up being humiliated in the end." I turned around to leave. At this moment, Mary suddenly knelt before me as if gone mad, clutching my legs and crying, "No, don't go, George, my husband, don't leave me. I love you. The one I love now is you. Please listen to my explanation, okay? Just hear me out." I turned and walked away from Mary's place without hesitation, my steps resolute and final. No matter what reason she had, I would never look back. The harm this woman has caused me is already too much, and I can no longer allow myself to sink into endless pain. Not long after leaving, Mary started calling me frantically. The phone kept ringing, like her desperate pleas echoing in my ears, but I no longer wanted to hear her voice. Without hesitation, I turned off my phone, shutting out everything about her. I don't want to be affected by her words anymore, nor give her any chance to hurt me again. In the end, Mary reluctantly signed the divorce papers with me. At the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau, her eyes were filled with regret. It was a complex expression. There was guilt, sorrow, and even a hint of reluctance. She looked at me, her lips trembling slightly, and said in a hoarse voice, "Husband, I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. I shouldn't have been so selfish, shouldn't have taken your efforts for granted. I regret it. Regret not cherishing your kindness to me. If I could start over, I would love you properly and never let you suffer any grievances again. I really had my reasons. I'll explain it to you later." but I just glanced at her indifferently and didn't respond. What's the use of explaining? The damage has been done, and the bond between us has long been shattered beyond repair. I also said indifferently, only true love would tattoo there. The thought alone makes me sick. Mary's face turned pale, unable to utter a word. After learning about our divorce, my mother-in-law was despondent for a long time. She sat there with empty eyes, as if she had lost something precious. After a long while, she forced a smile and said, "George, it's Mary who wronged you. She was too foolish to know how to cherish you. You're a good kid, and you've given so much to our family over the years. Later, Mom will find you a good girl. When Mom is gone, all her shares will be left to you. You must take care of yourself and not lose faith in life because of Mary." I shook my head and said, "Mom, I'm tired. I don't want to start another relationship. I need to go out and clear my mind." My mother-in-law sighed, her eyes filled with helplessness. She knew I had suffered too much and needed time to heal. I embarked on my journey, boarding the plane with a weary body and soul. After finding my seat and sitting down, I leaned back and closed my eyes, trying to calm my thoughts. At that moment, a familiar voice reached my ears. "George, what a coincidence." I opened my eyes and saw Sarah. She was dressed in a sharp professional outfit, her long hair neatly tied back, exuding an air of confidence and elegance. Sarah sat down in the seat next to me, a hint of concern in her eyes. "I heard you got divorced and quit your job. How did this happen?" I forced a bitter smile, unsure where to begin. "It's a long story," I replied simply. Sarah slightly furrowed her brows. "So what are your plans now?" "I want to go out for a walk first, to relax a bit." Sarah looked at me, a hint of admiration flashing in her eyes. "That's a good choice. Sometimes we need to step away from familiar surroundings to see ourselves more clearly." She paused for a moment before continuing. "Would you be interested in joining my company? I think you're very capable, and you could definitely leverage your strengths here." I shook my head. "Thank you for your kindness, but I'm really not in the mood to think about work right now. I just want to relax and find myself again." Sarah smiled understandingly. "No problem. I respect your decision. But if you ever change your mind, feel free to reach out to me anytime." We fell into a brief silence. Sarah seemed to be pondering something, while I was lost in my own thoughts. After a while, Sarah broke the silence. "Where do you want to travel?" "I don't have a specific destination in mind yet. Just want to wander around and see different scenery," I replied. Sarah smiled and said, "That's not bad either. Sometimes, unplanned trips can bring more surprises." We started talking about travel, and Sarah shared some of her own travel experiences and insights. Her words were filled with a love for life and a spirit of exploring the unknown, which made me look at her with newfound respect. As we chatted, I gradually relaxed. Sarah's cheerfulness and optimism infected me, making me temporarily forget my own troubles. The plane weaved through the clouds, with the scenery outside the window constantly changing. I gazed at the blue sky and white clouds outside the window, feeling an inexplicable surge of emotion in my heart. Life is like a journey where we encounter all kinds of people and events, filled with both laughter and tears. And now, I am embarking on a new journey to find the lost version of myself. Sarah seemed to sense the shift in my emotions. She gently patted my shoulder and said, "Don't overthink it. Just enjoy the journey. Maybe you'll find the answers you're looking for along the way." I glanced at her and nodded. I don't know what the future holds, but meeting Sarah on this unfamiliar plane has given me a glimmer of warmth and hope. After getting off the plane, Sarah actually suggested traveling together with me. "George, since we were so fated to meet on the plane, why don't we travel together? I also happen to want to relax a bit." Sarah's eyes were full of anticipation. I hesitated a little. After all, I just wanted some time alone. This might not be appropriate. I'm used to traveling alone. Sarah wouldn't give up. "Traveling alone is so boring. Wouldn't it be better to have a companion? Plus, I'm very familiar with many places and can be your guide." Looking into her sincere eyes, I found it hard to refuse. "All right then, but let's make it clear up front that I might change my itinerary at any time." "No problem." Sarah laughed happily. And so, we embarked on a wonderful journey together. At first, there was still some awkwardness between us, as we weren't very familiar with each other. But as the journey progressed, we gradually started talking more. We strolled together through the ancient town, feeling the traces of time. Sarah would tell me about the history and stories of these small towns, and her extensive knowledge impressed me greatly. "How do you know so much about these places?" I asked curiously. Sarah smiled. "I usually enjoy researching these things. Every place has its unique charm." Then she seemed to whisper, "And since you like it here, of course I had to do my homework." I raised my eyebrows, unsure of what to say. During our travels, we also encountered some minor troubles. Once, we missed the last bus and had to walk back to our accommodation. It was a long journey, and we were exhausted by the time we arrived. "I shouldn't have been so willful," I said with some regret. Sarah, however, smiled and said, "It's okay. It's still an experience. Maybe in the future, we'll look back and find it quite amusing." Her optimism gradually lifted my spirits. At that moment, I began to think that having her by my side wasn't so bad. Over time, I noticed subtle changes in my feelings towards Sarah. Her strength, optimism, and kindness deeply attracted me. One day, we watched the sunset by the sea. The golden glow of the setting sun spread across the water, breathtakingly beautiful. "George, do you know? It's been a long time since I've been this happy," Sarah said softly. "Me too," I replied, looking at her as a warm feeling surged in my heart. Just then, Sarah suddenly took hold of my hand. I was a bit surprised, but didn't pull away. We sat there quietly, watching the sunset and feeling each other's warmth. However, happy times are always fleeting. Not long after, I accidentally discovered Sarah's secret. It turned out she had deliberately checked my flight schedule to travel with me. My heart was filled with confusion and shock. When I confronted her, a flicker of panic flashed through Sarah's eyes. "Can you tell me why, Sarah?" Sarah remained silent for a moment, then slowly spoke. "George, I don't want to hide it from you anymore. I've waited for you for 5 years. From the first time I saw you, I was drawn to you, but back then, your heart and eyes were full of Mary, so naturally, you wouldn't notice me. I could only bury these feelings deep inside. Now that you're divorced, I feel this is my chance and I don't want to miss it." Sarah said her feelings for me had been planted many years ago. At that time, during a business event, she saw me for the first time. Back then, I was confident and composed, exuding a unique charm. Sarah's heart was slightly stirred at that moment, and from then on, she began to silently pay attention to me. Every time she saw me at various occasions, her gaze would unconsciously be drawn to me. She discovered that I not only had capability, but also kindness and a sense of responsibility. However, when she learned that I had a lover and was about to enter the marriage hall, Sarah's heart was filled with disappointment. She could only bury this feeling deep in her heart and silently wish me well. In the days after my marriage, she was also lost for a long time, trying her best to avoid appearing in places where I was, afraid that her feelings would uncontrollably show. And she also knew that Mary was not good to me. While worrying about me, she worked hard, wanting to help me in her own way. Hearing her words, I was filled with astonishment, but I still had many concerns in my heart. I was afraid of getting hurt again, afraid that I couldn't bring happiness to Sarah. "Sarah, I don't know if I can give you happiness." I hesitated as I spoke. Sarah looked at me, her eyes filled with determination. "George, happiness is something we create together. I believe we can." After returning from the trip, I began planning my new life. One day, I received a video from one of Mary's friends. The moment I clicked on the video, my emotions instantly became complicated. The video showed Mary and a few of her close friends at a bar. The friends were sitting together, their faces wearing mocking smiles. One of them said in a sarcastic tone, "Mary finally got divorced. I heard George left with nothing. At least he knows his place." Another close friend chimed in, "He was just a hopeless simp, doing so much for Mary only to get dumped in the end." Yet another friend said disdainfully, "He actually thought his efforts would be rewarded. How naive. There's no way Mary would ever fall for someone like him." At this moment, a close friend suddenly changed the topic and began praising Grimmerell. "Oh, look at Grimmerell. He's the heir of Grimmerell Group. Once he inherits the family business, his influence will be extraordinary. Mary and him are truly a perfect match. With the union of two powerful families, they're bound to have a blissful future." Another friend quickly chimed in. That's right, that's right. Grimmerell is handsome, talented, and comes from a wealthy family. Nothing like that George, who has nothing at all." Mary initially just sat there quietly, listening to her friend's words, her face expressionless. But as their remarks grew increasingly harsh, her expression gradually darkened, her brows furrowed, and her eyes narrowed slightly, beginning to flicker with anger. One of her friends continued, "Mary, why haven't you been smiling lately? Could it be you're regretting it? I heard George has been getting pretty close to that Sarah recently." Mary's face grew increasingly pale, her lips tightly pressed together, and her hands involuntarily clenched into fists. Another close friend said with a laugh, "Mary, you and Grimmerell would be so perfect together. George can't even compare." By now, Mary had reached her limit. She abruptly stood up, her eyes wide with fury, as if flames were about to burst forth from them. She shouted loudly, "Enough! Stop talking about it." Mary's reaction startled her girlfriends, leaving them dumbfounded. They clearly hadn't expected Mary to react so strongly. One of the girlfriends stammered, "Mary, what's wrong with you? For that George, is it really worth it? Wasn't he just your simp?" Mary glared at her and said firmly, "George has his merits. You're not allowed to speak ill of him anymore." Another close friend retorted defiantly, "Mary, don't forget, he's already divorced you. Why are you still protecting him?" Mary bit her lip, remained silent for a moment, and then said, "Divorce is divorce, but I can't forget how good he was to me in the past." With that, Mary picked up a wine bottle and smashed it directly on the ground. The sound of a shattered liquor bottle echoed through the bar, leaving everyone stunned by Mary's action. Mary's eyes burned with fury and regret. She glared at her friends and repeated, "I'm warning you. No one speaks ill of George again, or there will be consequences." The girlfriends exchanged glances, none daring to speak further. As I watched the scene in the video, my heart was filled with confusion and emotion. I couldn't understand why Mary had reacted that way. A day later, Mary sent me an invitation. She and Grimmerell were getting married. The invitation was delivered by Mary herself. She looked at me, her eyes filled with complex emotions, a hint of regret, yet seemingly concealing some indescribable expectation. "You must come. I have a good show for you to see." I looked at the invitation in my hand, my heart filled with mixed emotions. Memories of the past kept flashing through my mind, the sacrifices, the pain, as if they were still vividly before my eyes. Yet, for some reason, an overwhelming curiosity drove me, and I decided to attend this wedding. I brought Sarah along with me. As we entered the wedding venue, the luxurious decorations and romantic atmosphere couldn't help but draw sighs of admiration. Mary in her wedding dress looked like a fairy descending to earth, breathtakingly beautiful. She stood there, radiant, as if the entire world was captivated by her beauty. Grimmerell was also dashing in his tailored suit, and the two of them standing together truly lived up to everyone's praise as a perfect match. The wedding proceeded smoothly, with the couple exchanging rings, and everything was filled with joyous celebration. The guests' faces were radiant with smiles of blessing, as the sounds of music and laughter intertwined, creating a sea of joy. Yet, just as everyone was immersed in this moment of happiness, the unexpected happened. The large screen behind them suddenly lit up, but the content it played left everyone dumbfounded. It was evidence of Grimmerell's scheme to frame Mary's father. Video clips and documents that clearly revealed how the Grimmerell family, in their ruthless pursuit of profit, had driven Mary's father into a corner years ago. The entire wedding venue instantly fell into a deathly silence. The guests widened their eyes, mouths agape, their faces filled with shock and disbelief. Some held their wine glasses frozen mid-air, forgetting to put them down. Others even stood up from their seats, trying to get a clearer look. An elderly guest kept shaking his head, muttering to himself, "How is this possible?" The feud between the Grimmerell family and the White family runs so deep. A woman in an elegant gown covered her mouth, her eyes filled with horror. Is Mary enduring hardships to achieve her goal? How scheming. Grimmerell stared at the content on the large screen, his face instantly turning pale. His eyes brimmed with terror and fury, like a trapped beast. This isn't real. Who did this? He roared furiously, his voice tinged with madness. He whipped his head around to glare at Mary, his eyes filled with accusation. Was this your doing? Mary, how could you betray me like this? Grimmerell's voice trembled, his body shaking slightly with anger. Mary was no longer the gentle and beautiful woman she had been before. Her face was streaked with tears, her eyes revealing a mix of relief and the thrill of vengeance. That's right, I did it. I've been waiting for this day for so long. I've finally avenged my father. Mary's voice, initially cold, gradually grew hysterical. She looked at Grimmerell, her eyes filled with hatred. Do you really think I still love you? From the day you returned to the country, I got close to you just for revenge. You destroyed my family, ruined my life, and I won't let you off easy. Mary's words were like sharp blades, piercing Grimmerell mercilessly. Grimmerell listened to Mary's words, as if his entire being had collapsed. He shook his head, unable to believe it all. No, it can't be. You clearly said you still loved me, and even let me tattoo you. Grimmerell's voice was filled with despair. Mary paused, then said through gritted teeth, "If it weren't for deceiving you, I would never have done such a thing. And your kidney disease was fake too." At that moment, the police arrived at the scene. Grimmerell was taken away by the police, his eyes filled with resentment and despair. Mary watched Grimmerell being led away, tears streaming down her face continuously. Mary suddenly caught sight of me and hurried over, lifting the hem of her wedding dress as she ran. The pristine white gown fluttered with her movement, yet appeared utterly disheveled. Her eyes brimmed with urgency and panic, but when her gaze landed on Sarah beside me, Mary's expression instantly changed. First, a flicker of confusion passed through her eyes, followed by shock, and finally profound anguish. "George, who is she?" Mary asked tremblingly, her voice unable to conceal its tremor. Holding Sarah's hand, I calmly said, "My girlfriend." Those words struck Mary like a bolt from the blue. Her eyes widened, filled with disbelief. She stared blankly at our tightly clasped hands, as if time had frozen in that moment. Mary was thunderstruck, her body trembling slightly. Her lips moved as if she wanted to say something, but not a single word came out. Her eyes were filled with remorse and pain, tears welling up in them. "No, this can't be. George, how could you?" Mary's voice choked up, her face etched with deep regret. She collapsed onto the floor, the beautiful wedding gown now devoid of its radiance. Then she bitterly revealed the truth. It turned out that White Group had suffered a heavy blow, and Mary's father, unable to bear the pressure, jumped to his death. At that moment, Mary's world completely collapsed. She felt as if she had fallen into an endless abyss of darkness, surrounded by loneliness, fear, and despair. She couldn't accept her father's death and was engulfed in immense grief. Every day, she locked herself in her room, drowning in tears, having lost all hope for life. During those dark days, Mary's heart was filled with pain and confusion. She didn't know how to face this sudden change, nor did she know which path to take in the future. She began to resent the unfairness of fate, wondering why she had to endure such suffering. She even began to doubt herself, feeling like a failure who couldn't protect her own family. Just when Mary was sinking into despair, I appeared. I quietly stayed by Mary's side, offering her support and encouragement. At first, Mary didn't feel much about my presence. She thought I was approaching her out of pity or some other motive. She even somewhat resented my concern, feeling that I was intruding on her grief. She even made a bet with her best friend to see if I could persist through 100 marriage proposals. Later, at her mother's insistence, Mary reluctantly married me, but she never let me touch her. However, as time passed, Mary gradually sensed my sincerity and kindness. I not only took care of her in daily life, but also provided her with emotional support. I assisted Mary in handling white group affairs, offering advice and strategies, giving her a glimmer of hope. During this process, Mary's heart began to change. She started to develop some affection for me, but her pride and stubbornness made her unwilling to admit her feelings. At the same time, Mary had not forgotten about her father's death. She secretly investigated the cause of her father's death and found that the Grimmerell family was highly suspicious. This discovery filled her heart with rage and hatred. Determined to avenge her father, she began deliberately getting close to Grimmerell upon his return to the country. Using her beauty and intelligence, she successfully recaptured Grimmerell's attention. Grimmerell pursued her passionately, while Mary pretended to reciprocate his affections. During her time with Grimmerell, Mary was filled with inner conflict and struggle. On one hand, she had to endure her disgust for Grimmerell, while on the other, she had to feign affection for him. She knew she was playing with fire, but she had no other choice. To obtain crucial evidence, she even agreed to Grimmerell's unreasonable demand of getting a tattoo. Later, Grimmerell deliberately created many conflicts to separate Mary and me. He made me doubt Mary's feelings, straining our relationship. When Mary refused to divorce me, Grimmerell forged medical records, claiming he had nephritis and needed me to donate a kidney. Of course, this was also Grimmerell's test for Mary. If she disagreed, it would prove she had fallen in love with me. Mary put on a performance in front of Grimmerell and my mother-in-law. She knew her mother-in-law wouldn't agree, but Mary also won Grimmerell's trust. So, the two registered their marriage. Mary found crucial evidence in Grimmerell's home safe, leading to today's outcome. Mary sat on the floor, tears streaming down her face. She looked at me and Sarah and said, "George, I was wrong. I was truly wrong. I shouldn't have given up on you for revenge. I shouldn't have been so proud and stubborn. If I could do it all over again, I would cherish you properly and love you well." Mary's voice was filled with remorse and pain. "George, can you forgive me? Let's start over. If you hold any resentment in your heart, I'll propose to you 100 times, please." I looked at Mary, feeling a mix of complex emotions in my heart. I once loved Mary and gave her everything I had. But now, I have Sarah, and the pain Mary caused me is something I will never forget. I just calmly said, "I'm sorry, but you have Grimmerell's name on you." Mary was thunderstruck, gave a bitter smile, and then left indifferently. Later, Grimmerell was sentenced to 10 years in prison for his crimes. After going through all these changes, the mother-in-law's health deteriorated day by day, and she eventually passed away from illness. Before her mother-in-law passed away, she made a surprising decision. She returned my kidney to me. She said she couldn't bear to see me suffer anymore because of my past sacrifice and hoped I could live well. Mary, disheartened by this series of events, dissolved the company. It said she cried until she went blind, then went abroad, perhaps wanting to start anew in a foreign land, far from the pain of the past. I'm with Sarah now, and although our life is ordinary, it's filled with warmth and happiness. We experience the ups and downs of life together, supporting each other and growing side by side. However, one day later, Mary suddenly added me back on social media. A wave of mixed emotions surged in my heart, wondering why she had reappeared. When I saw the photo she sent, the area where she once had a tattoo was now smooth, and she wrote, "I've had several surgeries. The tattoo is completely removed. Can I come back to you?" Reading these words, my heart was filled with mixed emotions. Memories of the past surged like a tide, but I knew what was gone was gone. We could never go back. I deleted the photo and blocked her, because I understand this thing called a tattoo. Even if it's washed away and no longer visible, the mark remains in the heart, impossible to erase.